Welcome to Talk Design, the show where creatives have conversations. I'm Adrian Ramsey and I'm your host. Having lived a life of design myself, I wanted to share with you the creatives that inspire me and in turn may inspire you. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm Adrian Ramsey and I'm your host on Talk Design. I started this podcast because I wanted to share the journey of design that I've had and that many others have had. And I find it inspirational talking to people globally about what makes design tick and what makes design create a better world for others. My journey has taken me from clothing globally, women's swimwear, performance sportswear, mountaineering, yachting, all these kind of genres where each place I would learn more and more about different specifics and how clothing can support those. Also, I've worked in innovation as a systematic innovation trainer and worked with the aerospace industry as well as the marketing industry and the design industry. In all my years of design, still my favorite is the built structure and interiors. In years of travel and discovery, I constantly look at what the emotions are that are created by the built space. I'd consider myself a student of design for my whole life and will go on that way. Some of the things that I do to support this is my podcast, and then workshops and masterclasses where I teach people about trends and design thinking, and tours where I take people on tour with me and we go and discover different points of architecture or interior design globally. I always think that when you're passionate about something, one of the things that you should do is you should share it. And so creating the podcast was my way of sharing my enthusiasm and the enthusiasm of others and their passions around design with you. I hope you really enjoy it. And I ask you, would you please drop us a line? Tell us what you think. Tell us what got you excited. It's so inspiring when we get messages from our listeners that tell us about the things that shifted in their life because of who they listen to. And it gives me the inspiration to dig deeper and find more people that I can bring to your ears so that you live a better design life. My guest on Talk Design today is Laura Martin Bovard. Laura owns a company called LMB Interior Design. They're in Oakland, California. She also has another site called The Divine Hustler, which is super exciting as well. With this, we've just had a little bit of a chat as a warm-up, and it's going to be a fascinating journey. So if you're in for a journey that talks about human behavior and the soul of people and the soul of running a business like this, stick around. Here we go. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adrian. So nice to be here.
Yeah, it's a real treat for me as well, trust me. Let's kick off with one of my very common questions, which is at some point, there was this little girl who ended up becoming an interior designer. What influenced that? When did you discover that you had this passion for it or for something and it led to interior design?
Oh, I love that question. It's so funny when when you look back in time and you can see how all the steps led to where you are. And there were so many moments in my life where I was so unclear and uncertain about what to do. And I didn't start my interior design practice until I was in my early 30s.
Wow.
And up to then, I was in the restaurant industry. I worked in fine dining, doing everything you could possibly think of. I did event planning, I ran the floor, I was the wine buyer, I was a manager, I waited tables for a huge amount of that. And all along that journey, I graduated from UC Berkeley as an English major. And everybody kept saying, "What are you going to do with your English degree? You're going to be a teacher?" And when I was a child, I used to like to hold class for my siblings to try to help them get a leg up. Like, you guys are going to learn this in math this year. Let me teach it to you this summer. So next year when you go. So I can see how my love of teaching, especially spiritual practices, is what the
Mm-hmm.
Divine Hustler does.
Divine Hustler.
But the interior design bit, I had a therapist when I was in college, and I used to come home and come to session and talk to her about things I was doing in my apartment. And also going back to my early childhood, every time we moved, I would always move the furniture around 20 times and constantly, trying to make pillows and drapery and things out of fabrics from my mom's friends and things like that. So, that was when I was quite young. But then when I was in college and my therapist said, "Have you ever thought about being an interior designer?" And in a million years, I never imagined that people would pay you to create beauty.
Yeah.
Like, how on earth was like that? That just seemed too simple. And I also really I love to pull together experiences for people, events and
Uh-huh.
meals. And because I had a military father, we moved around all the time. And so I think the wound that kind of came out of that is never really having a landing pad that felt like our family home, where and I feel very strongly that homes are about creating spaces for people to have their emotional and spiritual recovery, to create community, to have a reflection of your own personal brand,
Mm-hmm.
of like what makes you feel good in your own space, right? And so when my therapist suggested this to me, I was still in the season of the restaurant world, and I just kept putting it off because I didn't want to have. I met with Agnes Bourne, who's a Bay Area very successful designer back when I started, and she said, "You have to go back to design school." And I was like, "Really? Oh, I don't want another whole lot of student loans." And I was on my own. I've been on my own since 16. So I was really used to taking care of myself and then having this huge amount of,
Debt.
UC Berkeley debt to pay. And then I didn't want to add on to it. So a few years later, one of my waiter friends, I said, "Oh, I saw this interior design class." And he said, "When are you going to stop talking about this and just go do it?" And that was just that pattern interrupt in that moment, where I was like, "You know what? He's right. I'm going to just go for it." And so I stupidly or not stupidly did not ever work for an interior designer before because well, two small, tiny little one woman firms. And one of those women, while I was in design school, about halfway through, gave me a referral to one of her clients' daughters. And the amount of money for that budget was what I would have made on it, what I did make on it was double what I made waiting tables. And so
You went, I'm in.
it just clicked, and I was like, "Wait a second. I sold one carpet and I made as much on that sale as I did a whole week of waiting tables." And I realized I could actually make money doing it. And then it just, over the last 21 years, I cannot believe how it's gone. I never could have imagined it would turn out this well.
Wow.
And as we talked earlier, that's kind of where the Divine Hustler came in. Like once I started having this alter ego to help me be more brave and take more risks and love myself more until I finally became her. And
Yeah.
now I just,
Now
so
it's not separate from you, it is you.
it is me. Yeah.
I want to jump back to being in the hospitality industry. I have a slightly paralleled story with that, where I left school and I went and worked in video production. I say this, I left school and I had a job working in a kitchen doing dishes. I was a dish pig for a very short period of time. And at the same time, I ended up getting a job, my first job, which was in television production. And there I was just like a runner. And we made video productions and things like that. And I did a lot of like deliveries of equipment and all those kinds of things. And along the way, I was training as a videotape editor and a cameraman. And anyway, but I had this restaurant job that was kind of like I'd left school and got that. Didn't do particularly great at school, got fabulous like marks and all the artistic stuff, got absolutely terrible marks and, you know, things like math and stuff like that. And mainly because of the dyslexic side, you know, my dyslexia. So I ended up waiting tables reasonably quickly. So it was probably about a period of maybe a year and a half, 2 years where I didn't work in the industry. And then I was like, do you know what, the speed that I was getting to learn in the other side of the industry, in the entertainment side of the industry, I went, this is just too slow. I had a boss that was an absolute jerk, and I just went, you know what, I don't know. I love this industry. I loved what we did, but I just constantly felt disheartened with the pace of it, and that I didn't feel like I was getting to where I wanted to be able to be really useful. So I had met a girl when I was on holidays, and she lived, you know, one another end of the country. So I went, you know what, screw it, I'm out of here. So I was quite happy to get out of home and go and all the rest. So I did that. And when I did that, I went and found a job in that same industry in Auckland City. So I went from Wellington to Auckland City in New Zealand. And before I, you know, would have found that job, the first thing I did is I went and got a waiting job, because I could wait tables. I'd learned to wait tables. And the next, how many years? 3, maybe. Yeah, probably 3, 4 years. I never stopped waiting tables. So I did that as my side hustle. I did the other and, you know, learned certain skills in camera work and videotape editing and things like that. And eventually I got to a point where I went, you know what, I'm going to go away and do a ski season. I'm going to go and move to the mountain and go snow skiing. So I went, okay, cool. I got a job there doing silver service waiting. So table cooking and all those kind of things. Got trained by an Austrian guy to do it, which was fabulous. The point that I was going to make with all this, and now I've waited tables all around the world since then, was what I had to learn about people and how you learn it in this environment where there's egos and some people showing off, some people relaxing, some people being intimate. You know, you learn to read people at a distance, and if you connect with them, you get such great relationships from them. You know, like I would meet people who were famous people, and they would be like, they would give of themselves for me. And then I'd meet other people who would be, you know, like smart asses or whatever, you know, like, but you certainly gain this thing of rapidly reading people. And to this day, I use that lots. I use it lots in my
100%.
business.
Yeah, it's so invaluable. I mean, honestly, like my son right now is thinking about my sister owns 3 restaurants actually here in the Bay Area, and he is taking some classes in the community college and is going to probably go, and my husband doesn't necessarily think it's the best idea for him to be around all those adults and all the drinking and the shenanigans, but they're wonderful restaurants, and I'm like, go for it, because the amount of skill that I learned of how to, I matured in that role, you know, and I did it for 10 years. And then I ended up designing restaurants. And so I knew how to design a restaurant based on, you know, how all the way I moved around in those zones all those years. You know?
It's a fascinating journey, isn't it? And it's one
really
that can
is.
take you everywhere. Like I've worked in restaurants in New Zealand, America, England. It would always be one of those things that when I was traveling, I'd go, I can do this. I can walk in, I can silver serve, I can do all these things, and I can have an alter ego that put on, like, you know, the bow tie or whatever it was, and engage with people. But it taught me rapport with people and how important that was. And how to build it quickly so that I could serve them. so that I could get their needs done. And in a restaurant, it's, chop, chop, chop. Shit's happening,
It
baby.
totally is. And there's also a real, like, if you work in good restaurants, which I had the benefit of doing for a number of my jobs, was the curation and the quality of the ingredients and the experience. Like, Chez Panisse is a restaurant here in Berkeley that
I know
is
it.
pretty world renowned, and because she does everything so wholesome and so like what's
So
fresh
well.
today,
Yeah.
and it's put together in this really simple but authentic way. And the impact, I didn't work there, but my boyfriend of 5 years worked there, and I was there all the time. And I'm doing a little project for them right now, actually, at that
Bring it
restaurant.
on. Love it.
Yeah. And it really impacted my design, the way that I write, the way that I put my own home together, the way I serve meals. It's like they all have layered to create this really rich experience, lived
Yeah.
experience,
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for it. Yeah.
It's interesting when you get into any of these kind of things, like it's about the edit. It's about what you leave behind as opposed to what you
Right.
start with. And I just had the pleasure of hanging out with Marlon Blackwell from Marlon Blackwell Architects a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about these kinds of things, and Marlon said that exact thing to me, so I'm crediting Marlon with it. He said, you just keep editing. You just keep editing. And
you just keep editing.
Yeah, and that's where the magic is, because it gets simplified, and that's when it becomes more beautiful. Anyway, I just thought it was a really interesting little parallel, that human behavior part and observing humans and learning from that observation and how it really benefits your business. And even to this day, it would have a massive impact, and it will always have. I find the same thing. So you have I love that piece also, where somebody said to you, are you going to do this thing, or are you not going to do it? And because you never actually understood how the money model of it worked, that was probably the fear that stopped you. You didn't know how to transition. And
oh yeah, it's always fear that stops us, isn't it?
Yeah, always, always. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
Yeah, it is. So tell me a little bit about your design business and where your passions are in that, and what really lights your fire with LMB Interiors. What's the part that's like, it's worth getting up for?
Yeah, it's where to begin with that one. It's different now than when I first started. I mean, I still absolutely adore putting together schemes and watching the vision go from an idea to the physical manifestation. Just watching myself be the creator creating itself,
Yeah.
and watching all of this be made manifest. That part of it is still a huge turn on to me. The people and the relationships, though, are probably even more inspiring to me, because I watch how the ethos of my business and the values that we hold so dearly, of making sure that we're serving quality with value, and creating environments that really reflect who the clients are becoming. Like, we hold that vision for them. But I think the thing that is probably the most exciting for me is the team that we've built. I have a studio director who's worked with me for 11 years, who is, I call her my work wife. We are soul sisters, and we share the same value of having our work environment feel fun and joyful. And we will stop and have dance parties, and we will, anytime there is a problem with a client, we come together as a group and talk about the personal, the emotional impact that we're experiencing going through potentially difficult clients, how, what parts of us are feeling triggered by this. And we try to really bring the humanity into the business, not just with our clients and the projects, but as a team. And that is after 15 years of running this business. I had many great employees, and also a few that were just I can see in hindsight now that they were great training partners for me, because I was forced to learn how to set boundaries, to stand in my power, to say, no, no, that's not okay. And then I didn't ever want to be a boss or a leader, but it turns out that that's just what my nature is. I just was trained in my childhood and through the culture that I was supposed to do it a certain way. And that certain way didn't work for me. I didn't like that whole top down thing, and in our world at L&B Interiors, we call it a heterarchy.
A
It's not
hierarchy.
a mate.
Oh, I love it.
It's a sisterhood. It's like a circle,
You
not
got
a
any men
pyramid.
who work there?
I have my soul brother, Jason,
Yeah.
who helps us with photo shoot production. And of course, my husband is around. He's very much a man of service. So anytime we need, something in a pinch that
Yeah.
we need his intelligence and his physical capability, he will show up and
Yeah,
help
sure.
us with certain things. But mostly it's just women.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we love the men. We love our men.
See, I love that. That's a really interesting thing. And it's a really nice way of putting that at the, as a part of it, is that whilst you might be a sisterhood, and I've got friends who run interior design companies with 20 plus people in them, and some of them are all women. And there's something I find magical about employing both. Like there's something I get from the men that might be in the team, and there's something I get from the woman in the team.
Oh, yeah.
There tends to be, and I imagine this happens a little bit with, a heavily woman-dominated firm. There's this thing I love working with women. I think that their ability to see things with a more empathetic outlook, including a logical outlook, where men tend to go to the logical first because they're trying to solve the problem as opposed to feel the problem. They're in a mechanical sense. And being a male, I play in that shit. It's just this and this. So get that shit done. Like no empathy.
Well,
just
it's true,
I want it done.
But both are needed. It's like sometimes it's a balance. It's the yin and the yang. I mean, I think this, we can go down that path if you want to, but I think that respecting the fact that we each bring our gifts and finding a way to honor that the other person operates in a different way doesn't make my way right and their way right. No. It's sort of like, how open are we to allowing people to have their perspective and then ultimately make a decision after we've had a chance to hear the other perspective without taking it personally or feeling criticized or that we're being made wrong. And there's a way to language that so that each party has their sovereignty and there's not this righting and wronging thing that so many people, like before we started recording, we were talking about how that can happen politically. Oh, because if you vote for this one person, immediately I cast you aside as somebody that I'm not willing to engage with because I make it mean all these things about you. But there's a whole human there that you're rejecting. We're all this, we're 20 different versions at any given time of the day. We have all these different parts of us. So like keeping it all into one lump, whether if you're the logical man or the feeling woman, we need both.
You have to plan your feminine and your masculine throughout the whole journey. I want to say for the people in America who would be listening, because most of my audience is in America, is we were not talking about American politics when we were talking about this polarization. We were talking about my daughter voting for our local mayor and just how she processed that thing. And it was on a male-female basis that she was processing it. So why would I vote for a male when I could vote for a female? So we could talk about American politics, but we'd be here forever.
I'd rather not. Trust me, that's the last thing I would ever want to talk about.
I had an interesting experience just recently. and it was based around American politics. I was in Canada, and I was skiing, and I was sitting in a gondola and going up in the gondola, only a 6-person gondola in Lake Louise. And I was sitting talking to my buddy I was skiing with, and something came up, and we were saying about polarization, like the polarization. And in that, there was a little piece of a discussion that came up around the American presidential race. And there was a lady who was sitting next to him, who we were sitting opposite each other, and she was sitting next to him. And she would have been, I would say, maybe early 60s. And she looked across, sort of bemused about maybe what we were saying. And so I asked her, I can't even remember what I asked her. And I said, one of the questions became, how did American politics become so polarized? And I sort of said to her, because so many things in the world at the moment feel polarized. So I don't give a rat's what happens to your American politics particularly. But there is this polarization of, this is right, this is wrong. And she said there was a Speaker of the House, and I think it was Speaker of the House in America in the 80s, who up until then, it was not polarized. She was from Vermont, and it was not as polarized. It was, how do we do this for the country? How do we do this for the greater good? And there was a whole lot less polarization in it. And she said, but this particular Speaker of the House, whoever it was, kind of pitted the sides against each other, and it shifted the culture and politics. And in shifting that culture and politics, it has shifted the culture in the country to some degree. Now, there's lots of culture that needed to be shifted. There's lots of things that need to constantly grow. And we had this conversation again about my daughters in this thing of, I see the polarization of male female. And I was laughing because we're living in a more gender fluid world than we've ever lived in, but there's this polarization of male female. And so it was fascinating to just sort of like listen to her wisdom of the way life was. We got both my buddy and I got out of the gondola. We thanked her for her conversation. And we both stood there after she'd skied off and went, how amazing was that? She just,
You got schooled.
We got schooled in the most beautiful way.
But it's sort of a holistic theme that is an umbrella over all of humanity. It's like, we're in a time where there's so much righting and wronging and people pointing fingers. I know that's not a new concept, but until we are really willing to do our own shadow diving and get really curious about where we are being the thing that we're accusing the other person of being, even if it's even on a microcosm, like, all the things that we make our opposing party wrong for, or men or women wrong for. We all have aspects of that within us. We are one consciousness. And what we need to start saying, I hope that there are a lot of people that I am engaged in conversation that we can shift the tide by walking over that bridge from ego to soul and truly living out our lives by slowing down and reconnecting with our compassion for ourselves so we can be more compassionate toward others. And until we start to be the change we want to see, all of this will continue. And I know that wherever we put our attention is where the energy goes. So why I don't discuss politics with people is because people are doing it in a way that is fear-based. And it's not to say put your head in the sand, certainly be aware of anything, whether it's consciousness around our business, around our families, around politics, around our communities, but it starts with us. We have to really get sober around our own judgments, our own fear-based thinking. When our cup starts to get full, it spreads to our families, then it spreads to our businesses and our communities, then to our towns, then to the world. That's the way that I can see the evolution of our consciousness expanding. And it's the same thing. It's like as above, so below. It's like what we think we're attracting what we want, but really we're attracting who we are. So if what we're seeing in the world is fear and chaos and whatever, that's our own internal fear and chaos that we're projecting out into this field. And so I will just maybe shift the conversation a little bit, if you don't mind, to
No,
what we talked about earlier
I'm halfway through a
around.
page of notes here right now.
Okay, good. I just want to say that the energy in my interior design firm shifted when I shifted, when I stopped being scared and chasing after and thinking there was something to fix within myself. And instead, I started to look into within my own heart to be the love that I wanted, to be the abundance that I wanted by being grateful, whatever. It's like it makes my head spin to see the difference in it. I would just think about my own family unit. My husband and I journeyed through so much rupture and so much chaos. I kept trying to fix him. I kept putting it outside of me. And then when I decided I'm not going to tell them anymore, I'm going to just focus on my own consciousness and stop talking so much, start listening more to my heart. And the way that has impacted my home life is an absolute miracle. There is so much well-being and so much love and so much respect for one another now. And I can see that it is directly correlates to the shift I made when I stopped being so scared. I mean, it's all thought. If it's a thought that makes me feel heavy, then it's fear. If it's a thought that makes me feel lighter and more joyful, then that's love. And do I want fear or do I want love? I cannot feed both at the same time. So I choose love. And in doing so, that has literally transformed my life and took my business from, the first year, less than $100,000 in volume, to this past year, we did 4 million in volume. And it's just getting better clients, more profitability. We can give more service through our different philanthropic organizations. And, that's the way it works. So yeah, Divine
Oh.
Hustler Church is over.
Oh no, you just opened the door. I love that. I love all of that. And I can resonate with all sorts of parts of that as well. And I want to ask you some questions around it. One of the first ones is who were your mentors, or whether they were physically there or whether they were energetically there? Who were your mentors that, well, actually, I might ask one more question before that. A bit like your friend, the waiter, saying, when are you going to do this interior design thing? What was there an event or a turning point or a slap upside of the head that woke you up and made you sit back and see something? What happened? What was that first seed?
Well, I think that happened in childhood. I think that watching the way that my father, his mental perspectives were so, in my assessment, misaligned with, he was not in the flow of life. Everybody, it was always somebody else's fault. It was always, there was a real victim story underlying. And I always said, I will do everything in my power to never be like him. And now I see him as one of the greatest gifts in my life, because if I hadn't seen how not to be, I wouldn't have known how to be.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very grateful for that. But I had so many people believe in me along the way that saw something in me. My French teacher in college became like a surrogate spiritual father to me. And he taught me to meditate.
Oh, wow. In college.
Yeah, he became like a very, very important person in my life. So I started meditating then, and then I had a roommate who was into some spiritual practices, and I resisted it because it just seemed, I don't want to slow down that much. I was hustling after life, trying to survive.
Yeah.
I
Instead of thrive.
And now I'm thriving. So I'm grateful for every step along the way. But I also had a boyfriend when I was in college for about 3 years, and the impact, he was not a good guy in a lot of ways, but I'm so, so grateful to him. His mom moved in with us at a certain point, and she had the interior designer, beauty maker thing going on, and I watched her put together meals and make our apartment beautiful, and I started to learn about interior design through her. I learned about Joseph Campbell, and we used to watch Bill Moyers on PBS and I started to really get seasoned more because I grew up my dad was in the military. We were on food stamps. We were scrapping it together with 6 kids,
Yeah,
always
wow.
transferring from one location to the next. And I saw something through these young adult moments with the boyfriend's mom, with my
Mm-hmm.
therapist, with this
Mm-hmm.
French teacher,
Mm-hmm.
with people like that along the way, and watching Alice Waters at Chez Panisse run and grow that business. I was always watching and looking for expanders. I call
Yeah,
them expanders,
I love that.
you
I love
know?
that. I love that expanders because yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
because they show us how to do it.
journey of
Yeah.
constant expansion. Mm.
Hmm.
Wow. Okay, so I asked the question. It's always interesting to see what kicks what off and what moves you towards something. So you started meditating back when you were in college, and that you were, so fortunate to find that then. In that journey, you were saying to me earlier about you like to have a meditation that you'll go to sleep to as well. What's your daily kind of practices around that? What do you do?
Oh my God, where do we begin?
Oh,
I
here we
am
go.
so I run these Divine Hustler retreats for beauty
Mm-hmm.
makers, and the sole purpose of it is to learn and practice these tools, acknowledging that there's nothing to fix. We don't need to seek. We already are the prize,
Mm-hmm.
but we can season and enrich that lived experience by layering in practices. And I don't know if you've heard of Joe Dispenza, but he talks about not getting too vigilant with the same routines and the same habits all the time to keep ourselves growing and guessing and keeping it new and fresh. So, I'll just say, every day is a little bit different, but mostly it starts with listening to something optimistic, something, inspiring. I'm right now listening to a guy named Matt Kahn, who is a spiritual teacher, and I just listen to that and start my day out. Even before I put my feet on the floor, I claim that today is going to be a beautiful day, and let the universe use me to be the love and the light that I am. And I used to always think this was so hippie and woo. I wouldn't even talk about it. Like, it's just a miracle. I mean, now I'm just like, who can I share this with? Because it's not woo. We are consciousness, we are energy. And the higher our vibration is vibrating, the more solutions and the more high frequency magic finds us in the field. If we're entangled in the density of the 3D and the fearful mind, we just say stuck. And so I do everything I can in the morning to fill up my cup. I jump on my rebounder. I put on crazy music and dance like a wild woman. Make my green smoothie with all of the things in it, creatine and protein and flax and maca, and I'm loaded up with all the things.
Yep.
And I'll either go for a hike or I'll go for a workout, but I'm energizing my body temple to be full up, like batteries fully charged. So as I go through my day, I'm just naturally inclined to be more generous and more kind and looking for, the shiny objects versus when I'm tired and tanked and I'm not, then I go into resentment. I
Mm-hmm.
feel annoyed. I can't deal with problems that come up at work as well,
Mm-hmm.
but it's it's a daily practice, and breath work is a huge part of my practice. So I
Oh,
do many rounds of deep breath work. I go into this total awakened state and connect into the field, and I just lay there and savor feeling like the oneness consciousness. And then by the time I head out the door, I am gung-ho to serve, because I have served myself so fully that now I have everything to give others, and it it makes for a much more magnetic life, for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I love that. I love especially what you said around Joe Dispenza's thing of, having such a rigid program doesn't allow necessarily for growth in the same way that having a loose program, but knowing the
Yeah, you got to
benefit it
change it up,
brings.
but you
Yeah,
know you're going to do it from 5:30 till 7:30.
yeah,
That's my
yeah,
God. Those are my God hours,
yeah,
you
right.
know.
5:30 till 7:30. Do you know something I was saying to somebody the other day? They said, oh, because I do a lot of my podcasts between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. And I was saying to somebody who is an interior designer here in Australia, he said to me, so you're one of the 5 a.m. club. And I said, well, in truth, I'm not. In practice, I am. And one of the things that I get that brings me amazing joy is usually at least one morning a week, I'm podcasting with somebody and I meet a person like you. And I go, oh, wow, retake my own stock at this point. What are my own things that I'm doing? What have I become stale in? What am I, like it gives me that vision, whether that be in, like we're talking about spiritual practices, and we're also talking about the beauty that we can create for people and the ease of living that we can create for people and our human connections. But it could also be talking about a design problem detail to fix, to get fresh thinking on. And I said to him, it's like taking a supercharged shot of life at least once a week. And I meet with global groups of architects once a week as well. So my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is filled with the mornings is filled with knowledge grabbing. Then I surf and I play pickleball and I, go to the gym and stuff like that. And the other time I go walking, whatever it is. But I love listening to your little, this is what I do. And it's not all the same. It's how you get them in. But it requires movement. It requires nutrition. It requires mental feeding,
Well, and it also requires like letting go of thinking, because I don't feel like I can't really hear the universe speaking to me if my left brain is just running, running, running. So the quieting down and the breath work and the jumping and the walking all settles down, the chaotic thinking, because when I get very still in my meditation, that's when the brilliant ideas come through. That's when it's just like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. And whether I implement the ideas or not, it's just fun to see that we think it's us, but it's not. These ideas exist in the field. And if we don't get still and quiet, we can't hear them, and they'll go on to somebody else. Like that, Liz Gilbert wrote that book called Big Magic. And that's the whole foundation of that book.
Big Magic.
Big Magic. Oh, it's such a good book, Liz Gilbert.
Oh, look that one up. It'll be on my playlist today.
Oh, great.
I think you're right. Like we were discussing, not us two, but I was with somebody just the other day and we were discussing around Wayne Dyer's thing, the music is created by the spaces between the notes. And the whole thing that unless you allow this, whether you believe in God or the universe or whichever it is, I've got a wonderful friend from New Zealand who lives in LA and she calls it the Godiverse just to keep everybody happy.
I think that's great.
Isn't it the Godiverse?
I'm going to steal that one.
It's awesome, eh? The Godiverse can't behave or can't play with you if you don't give it space to play. If you don't set intention and open the space, the Godiverse can't be yours. She can't come in. She can't come in and play.
Well, it's true. And then I also have been really just overwhelmed by this, knowing that it's like the Godiverse, we've been so trained through religion to think that God is outside of us, that we don't realize that it is us, and that it is experiencing this life like a movie through our eyes, our ears, our taste, our touch, our connections, that is the Godiverse getting to experience itself. And then and that's such perfection, but we think we've got to fix something about ourselves. We got to make ourselves wrong. We feel all this shame. All of these things. And it's like, no, you don't. You're perfect.
Yeah.
And there's so much about spiritual practice is about seeking to find something, when really, and that's why my tagline is come home to yourself. And I know it's other people's tagline as well. Although I did think that I was the first one to say it. I know I'm not. When we come home to ourselves, and we truly sit in this knowing that we are this infinite universe, then literally anything is possible. It is possible to recover from bankruptcy and tax debt and being in lack and having a ruptured marriage, to having more wealth than you ever imagined and doing $4 million business. It's just like, it is, whoever would have thought that was possible? But because of these practices, to surrender into that and allow it to happen through us, instead of thinking we have to effort and control and strive, it's just a miracle how alignment begins to happen when we really surrender into that. If I hadn't lived it and experienced it, I wouldn't have even known.
Oh, I totally know what you mean. Tell me this, how often do you find that you drop out of it or need to realign yourself? Like,
oh, a lot. We call those the shadow seasons. I mean, that's a very, like, you can't grow without tension, it's like we learn through these ruptures, we learn through the difficult times, and to allow it and love it just as much as the fallow times, as the fruitful times.
Yeah.
Because we make the fallow times so wrong, but we don't realize that that's a necessary part of the growth. But we get scared. We think we're failing, but no, it's not. This is a part of the design.
Yeah.
And those times have been very tough for me. But I know now, at a certain ripe old age of 57, that pendulum always swings back toward the light.
You can trust that it will always swing back. And it's so interesting listening to you talking about it. I know that I don't even know how long. I'm not very good with timelines, but probably somewhere in my early or mid 20s, I went to a seminar, like it would have been what they would have called a sellathon these days, but it was a seminar, and Wayne Dyer spoke on the stage.
Amazing.
And this
I
was
love him.
Yeah, in Auckland, New Zealand. And I was like, that I remember one other guy that spoke as well, but he is the one that stood out head and shoulders above everybody. And I had no idea what he was talking about. None. Zero. But there was something in his presence and in his being that shifted a perception of my view of the world. And that really, again, as I say, I knew nothing about it. I was telling somebody else about it, and they said, "Oh, I've got a cassette tape of him." And I'm like, "Oh, cool! I've got a Walkman." And so they said, you make a copy. So I made a copy. And
did you listen to it?
Oh yeah, yeah. And since those days, I've listened to Wayne Dyer probably, I would like to say weekly, in some periods of my life, daily and multiple times a day for months and months on end. And then at other times, like I might only pick him up every now and then. Like when I say that, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, I might listen to a meditation of his or him speaking on something. and I have all various ones that I kind of jumble up
Yeah.
into this jumble
That was
sale.
all through my 30s. I listened to Wayne Dyer on repeat. I had
Yeah,
one of those booklets with the
yeah,
tapes, and I
yeah.
had a mentor say to me, turn your car into a university
University.
on wheels.
Yeah,
And it maybe even was Wayne Dyer, probably was, because that was like my crack back then. Like
yeah.
I was like, okay. And sometimes that's what we have to do, we have to, it has to
Immerse
process
ourselves.
mentally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah. Oh,
I just recently, a good friend of mine who is what would you call it? She's a psychologist, but she works in industry with, offices, people's offices, and all that. A cultural psychologist is what you would call her.
mhm.
She lives down in
Mm.
Newport Beach, and we caught up. She's got a farm here in Australia, and she was out here, and her and I, usually I'll go and hang out with her and her husband and her son, but she was here on her own, and so I got what I call Angie time, because her name's Angela. I got my Angie time, just her and I hanging out. My wife was away, so I just got Angie time. I didn't have to share her. She didn't share me. We
Mm.
just got to hang. And she was saying to me that she'd just been in Spain and she'd taken a month out, and she was on her own, and she'd been practicing some mindfulness and stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. Tell me about that. And she's like, well, and I don't know whether you know Jose Silva, but the Silva method of
Oh yeah.
mind dynamics. And she said, oh, I've been doing the
Mind
Silva.
Valley. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing the
Yes.
Silva method.
Powerful.
And
Oh, one more thing on my list. I'm really have been thinking about diving into that. Yeah.
yeah, so I've been doing that for the past 4 or 5 months now,
Wow.
on a daily repeat, a wash and
That's
repeat, wash and
amazing.
repeat. Yeah,
What are you noticing about it?
certainly a lot of, like, so in the Silver method, there's a lot of dropping into your alpha brainwave consciousness. So
Hmm.
you're still conscious in beta, but you're dropping into alpha. And many years ago, I went to a course which was on alpha, which was a copy of the Silver method. And in doing that, I realized these things that I could do, that I could switch on my alpha brainwaves. My alpha brainwaves have probably always been pretty well attuned, being such a creative. And I've always had this thing is, you do not need to wait for the moment to be creative. You need to be creative in the moment. And so people go, oh, I'll come back to it. I'm not in the mood. I'm all this. I'm like, you know what? Get in the mood, get it done.
It's
Chop,
just a
chop.
choice.
It's
It's just
just a
it's
choice.
just
Yeah,
a choice. It's like, and we can't use willpower, it has to be just like overriding those parts that are trying to protect us from, I don't want to be inconvenienced, or, whatever. I've had
absolutely.
lots of those stories. And then also it's like, okay, well then maybe you're just not ready for it. I don't know.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, it's that, the teacher will appear when the student is ready, kind of thing.
Hmm. That's right.
My kind of like business and what I'm doing in my life is it's changed many times in my life. But one of the things now is I'm working with a TV show, and I'm going, yeah, I'd like to do more of that side of things. The podcast is over 200 episodes in, so that has its own momentum as well. And I really enjoy that side of it. And then I love to design, so I really enjoy that side of it. And I'm kind of remixing another narrative for the next 10 years, or I don't know, we'll see. But at least it'll be for life. But it's, what will that next 5 to 10 years be in that narrative? And so it's been really good with just getting me to allow space, because I'm like you, ADHD, and I can fill every space. Every
Yep.
space is always fillable. And
Nature abhors a vacuum.
exactly, we need a vacuum so that we can fill it with other things,
It's
and
so
allow
funny.
it to be. So yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
find it so fascinating. I want you to tell me about the Divine Hustler retreats and speaking and stuff like that, what you do with that, because I think that there's so much in this podcast that's going to resonate with people, that they will want a slice of mentorship maybe, or guidance, or opportunity to all the things that you just talked about, to allow their lives to get to this space of flow and know that it's all within them. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think I'm just here. I mean, I consider myself a light worker. Like, I'm just here to embody, be an example. I've been really in the struggle between, do I sell L&B interiors and just commit my life to being a coach and a mentor? And I'm like, that doesn't feel right either. I want to do it when I want to do it, how I want to do it, and not have the pressure of feeling like, and I have to show up weekly to coach people. With that said, a few people have found me and their stories are so compelling that I'm just like, I'm just going to work with you, because I feel like, but I want to be able to say the thing and drop the mic and kind of walk away. I want to point people toward the light within themselves. So I created the Divine Hustler retreats so that I could have an immersive experience to just pour all my love, whatever knowledge wants to come through for that group. I do structure it and then curate these beautiful experiences. The next one is June 6th through the 9th. So I don't know if this podcast will become coming out before then.
Yep,
it would be great if it did. I would love, we have a couple spots left. I would adore having.
So let's just go through what is happening June 6 to 9. Yeah. Because we can drop the podcast. I have control.
I have control. I love it. Oh,
I like that.
I have my love language.
I have,
the ego loves to have control.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm all over that.
It's such an illusion though, right?
Oh, totally.
So I can tell you about it.
I'll say to Imogen, could we drop this with this? And then, I'd like to do this with this. So she has control, because she'll say yes or no, but she'll make it happen for me. Yeah. So June 6 to 9, tell me about it.
Yeah. So it's Lake Tahoe. It's in Carnelian Bay. We have this beautiful custom high-end home that is a generous space. It's right on the lake with a dock and a hot tub, and we are going to curate beautiful meals and beautiful conversation. And something that I've learned so deeply in my cells, I know that, and it is for women because I'm a woman and that's what I know. I do have a whole posse of my gay friends who are like, when are you going to do one for us? And I'm like, maybe someday, but right now it's for women. And and because it's intimate, and we do, we do tools to increase intimacy between women. That's not sexual. It's just,
you had all the guys leaning in then, like.
I know, they're like, oh, we're going to come touch each other's hair. No, I'm making light. It's not that. It's what I know from the work that I've done. That probably one of the most profound things I invested in early on, when I didn't think I had the money, was to invest in going on short trips where I could focus just on myself, away from being a mom, away from being a new business owner, away from all the roles that I played. It was just time for me. And all of that, and to be witnessed by other people that were having the shared experience. When we, there are communities, indigenous communities in Africa, even, where it's like, when somebody does something harmful to another, they come together and they ask them, where does it hurt? Because hurt people are hurting people. And until we are witnessed and seen through our healing process, people don't deal with grief by themselves as well as they do when they are supported and feel held in community. So we go through some of the heartbreaks that we're experiencing, and then we move into discovering what that is about. And then we go through transformation, which is a key element of that shadow phase. Before we can go into the light, the deeper we go into the shadow, the brighter the light is on the other side. And so we walk through these several days,
the valley of darkness,
journeying through that. And what I see happen a lot with people who are reaching for spiritual practice is they're doing spiritual bypass. They're trying to go from you know, these really hard stuck points and just go straight to the divine, but they're not doing the human thing of taking responsibility for their part in co-creating the things that set up, like where we agreed to certain ways of being treated, or where we opted into overgiving and overserving and then thinking it's outside of us. We made that choice, and we can choose something different when we know better. So the retreats are beautiful. They are women gathering together to grow. The friendships that have come out have been just so profound. I've seen people start philanthropic organizations together, partner up as design teams together, become like lifelong friends. And this is our fourth retreat. We did one before COVID. We've done two since, and we're going into the fourth one here. And so it's going to be amazing. I mean, there's not one person who ever regrets coming on a Divine Hustler retreat. It's
How many
super,
people?
super juicy.
How many people will you have, or how many ladies will you have there?
We will have 10 attendees.
10, yeah.
9 or 10. We'll see how it sorts out. We have room for 10, but you know, we want to make sure the right people are there too. You know, we don't want people coming to think they're going to be fixed. I am
not fixing anybody.
I am not here to fix people. I'm here to hold space for people who know that they have everything within them, right? I'm no one's guru. No, nobody is. You are your own guru.
Yeah.
I'm just here to point the way and light the path, and to create support, and to feed, and to nourish, and give hugs and love, and lead breathwork sessions and short classes, you know, basically downloads about how to live from heart instead of ego. So yeah, that's what we have going on.
It sounds fantastic, and I can imagine my wife going, so what dates were those? Yeah, I could get to that.
Oh, send her out. I would love it.
Well, you know, like, it's interesting. She does similar to you. She takes time to go and just do stuff. Often she goes on her own. She won't go with a girlfriend or anything, because she goes, I don't want to feel any responsibility to anybody.
Beautiful.
She does quite a few with her sister, and she does quite a few that are yoga retreats on mindfulness. So my wife is a business coach and does high-end recruitment, like I was saying, but she's also a certified trainer in mindfulness. And she often will do workshops with companies, and she'll suddenly have them all moving towards a meditative state, or going through processes that they've got no idea that's going on in their lives, except for those who've already been there before. And that could be companies of, you know, a company full of people who do drilling of, you know, wells and stuff like that. And she'll
I love it. She's like a mole for the Gaudiverse.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting, but she has to go and get fed as well. Like, absolutely has to go and get fed. And I remember the first time that she ever even suggested doing something like this, there was one part of me that was like, what, she'll leave me here? Kind of like the fear of like, oh, she'll go and come back different or whatever. I don't know what it was. But I remember
my husband knows what you mean.
Yeah, this little pang of, oh my God. And I remembered back to a thing that Zig Ziglar, you remember Zig Ziglar?
Oh my God, I love Zig Ziglar. He's OG, that one. Yes.
Zig Ziglar was saying about if you're not growing, you're going backwards. And if you're in a relationship where one of you is growing and the other isn't, you will end up without that relationship, because you'll have nothing to talk about. One of you is growing. Now, not everybody grows at the same speed or the same pace or at the same time, but allowing space for your partner, whether it be friend, whatever, to grow and become, instead of being the crab in the bucket and pulling them back in because of your own fear base, I think was probably one of my biggest things. So I felt this little pang of, oh, fear. And then I was like, you know, Zig Ziglar this shit. You don't want your growth to be stopped, and empower this growth to happen. And
women want their sovereignty.
Oh,
women
they need it. They need it.
And
Men
so do
need it
men,
too.
so do men too.
Yeah.
But there is something so profound in what you just said, because the minute you looked at that part of you and took responsibility for your own thinking mind and gave her the gift, I'm imagining that every time she comes back from one of these things, she loves you even more and shows up more her full self. That has been my experience.
Yeah, look, she does. She grows from, she gets something from everyone, and it's beautiful to see her come home with a recentered energy and a clarity and purpose, or a clarity, and the woes of the world have got out of the vision, and all of a sudden there's harmony. And
that's right. She's found her alignment.
Yeah.
Do you do any of that? Do you go on retreats or anything like that for yourself?
Yes and no. I do.
Sounds like you go with your buddies to music shows and skiing.
Yeah,
and
I do. I tend to find that maybe it's the ADHD. Having an activity, it's like having a fidget spinner or something. Having an activity, and that is a solo pursuit.
Yeah.
So it's a solo pursuit, but I can do it with others. Sometimes I will do it. Like, give you the example. A few years back, I just need to shift. I need to shift my energy. And I said to Becky, I'm going to go. She said, do you need to travel? And I went, yeah, I think I do. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to Zion National Park. And she's like, what? And I said, I'm going to go to California, and then I'm going to go to Utah, and then I'm going to go to Zion National Park. And she said, okay, who with? And I said, I think I'll just go on my own. And she's like, cool, do it. When are you going? What does it take? And I'm like, well, the ticket's X or whatever. And I went, and this was probably about, maybe about 7 years ago, something like that. And I went to Zion National Park, and I literally went to I went into Vegas. I hired a car. I went from Vegas. I drove up to St. George and then into Zion. And once I got into Zion, I stayed just outside the park in a little Airbnb. And so I kind of had my room to myself, and I'd jump in the car, drive up to the park gates, and I would go and explore, get out of the car, go and walk the Narrows, get to where you can touch both sides. I need rocks and I need weight to ground me, because I'm too flighty, the ADHD and the high energy and all that. I need to be grounded. I like elevation. I like to be elevated.
I think you and my husband are cut from a very similar cloth. His sport is rock climbing, and he's a mountaineer. And it's just so funny to me. The similarities is so funny. There's only 8 different human types, I think.
and we're both in the same one.
I think you guys are the same one. And he's very,
I got to meet him. I got to hang out. So I do those kinds of things. And that was a big one, that one there, just going and climbing. And I have my screensaver that's in front of me on my computer is sitting on Angel's Landing, looking out down the valley. I've been back. I took my best buddy back there a little while ago. And we went and climbed and hung out, and I don't rock climb, but hiked and did all those things. And then I love to snow ski. And so I made a pact with myself to snow ski twice a year, every year. So 2 ski holidays every year until I run out of ability. And so I do that because, again, it's an individual pursuit that I can do with others. I surf. And so getting in the surf, again, it's me catching my waves, and I can be around people. I like to go surfing on my own as well, but there'll be other people in the water. So there is a little community, but I don't need to deal with them or whatever.
Right. You have your own zone.
Yeah. And I do a thing with doing houses called land whispering, which is where I go and I want to say read, intuit, whatever, property, land, and feel it energetically and look for the spots that are going to make the best house sites. And that often means getting up in the morning early before sunrise, getting to that site before sunrise, watching it wake up and being there as it
Beautiful.
transforms itself into the
Yeah.
day. And that's real alone. So yeah, I don't generally go on retreats with bunches of guys. I will travel
Well,
with
and
one or
men and women
two.
do retreats differently too, you know, but what I think I'm hearing you say is like every soul has their own unique connection to the consciousness, right? And it sounds like you really found yours through nature and getting to move your body, and having that focused connection
Yeah,
is a form of meditation. And
absolutely.
everyone gets to find what's right for them. That's the
Yeah,
beauty of it.
it is,
Yeah.
eh? It's like, and the things like your retreat, I totally get, you know. Have you ever come across a lady called Alison Armstrong?
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? Yes. I've done coursework with her. I
All right.
love Allison.
I love
She's a
Alison.
genius.
She,
Every woman needs to hear what Allison has to say about men. It
I,
definitely helped me in
you,
my marriage.
you just
I
gave me
love her.
shivers.
Yes.
I found Alison Armstrong through a friend of my wife's giving my wife the book, and I went, "What is this shit? I'm going to read this over my Christmas holiday."
Was it her fiction book, or was it the
It was the Queen's Code.
oh yeah, it was,
Yeah,
sorry, Allison.
yeah,
As an English major and a consumer of literature, it was hard for me to read, but the salient points that were at the back of each chapter,
yeah.
I just highlighted all of them. You
Right.
know, it was very good. Did you like it?
I did. I found it absolutely enlightening, and it was wonderful to read. And then I went and did a couple of her courses. It was
Nice.
great for my interaction with clients, like really wonderful
Yep.
for that. Great for my interaction with my wife and my friends as well. I found someone who was so positively, you said earlier, we love men, and that actually saw the balance of
Yeah.
the sexes and that, you know, of the
Hmm.
that her clarity on it and her discovery of it really shifted a lot of my thinking and understanding of how men can be viewed or are viewed and why that happens and how it happens. And
It's
then,
gotta be. Oh, sorry.
oh,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, no, go.
I was just gonna say, like, watching my own men, my own Caucasian cisgendered men,
Yep.
and seeing what kind, loving, compassionate people they are, getting lumped into this general category of all men are bad, it breaks my heart. It
Hmm.
literally breaks my heart. Men are so in such service and can be so loving. I do think that men who have been raised in toxic, shameful environments can be harmful to others. And I am
Absolutely.
grateful that through my own healing, I've been able to draw in men who are of service and who I feel respected and revered by. Those are the men that I think about when I think about men. And the ones who are doing those other things, I just have curated them out of my life, like edited, you know,
Yeah.
I don't play. And so part of that came out of having been in relationships with a lot of those very harmed men who were unkind and disrespected me. But of course, I was attracted to them because I had no self-worth.
That's it.
You know,
Yeah.
women who have self-worth aren't going to have men around who are, you know, bringing forward those kinds of behaviors. And it must be so validating for a man to hear what Allison has to say. Like when you're hurt, when you're hearing all the time about how horrible men are, and then you have this woman who is like, not true. It's that they're
Yeah.
being treated like girlfriends, and you're expecting them to read your mind. You're not asking clearly for what you want. You're not willing to ask again if you don't get it. And you're expecting, there's so much projection and expectation. And
Mm.
it's just like, teach people how to treat us and vice versa, you know,
Hmm.
and she does such an extraordinary job. I
Yeah.
wish they would teach this stuff in school, Adrienne, honestly.
I
This is
think
what
it's
should be
more
taught in
important,
classrooms.
yeah, that and business and commerce and understanding human relationships is the most important things that you'll ever learn in your life.
Yep,
And
that's so true.
we seem to be in or the world is, probably because of the patriarchy, has been in such a fear-based projection of trying to control things down a line.
Yeah.
That this man woman thing is like too elevated instead of, yeah, I don't know.
Well,
But
right.
it's
And
great
that's why
that
I think conversations like this
yeah.
and retreats and doing what you love, like those are all things we have no idea the impact that's having on the field. You know, maybe one person or 10 people will listen to this podcast all the way through. You know, we don't know who's going to hear what when, but that's why we need to be talking about consciousness, about love, about revering the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and taking responsibility for what we're doing to either contribute to that field or retract from it.
Yes.
You know, it's all a
Absolutely.
part of this.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well,
What a
we could talk
fabulous.
about this all day,
We
couldn't we?
could. So I'm going to get you to send me everything about the retreat, and we will get the podcast out really quickly so that we can put
Oh,
that
cool.
up. I
Thank you.
had one last question, because I know you have to go and I do too. If you only had one thing left that you could do, and I usually ask this as a project, but I'm going to say one last thing that you could do, because it could come from the divine hustler as opposed to from the interior side of it, what would you choose and why?
I would flip a switch on humanity. I would flip a switch on everybody's light turning on and people remembering who they are, that we are divine consciousness created from the source. And I would walk them over that bridge from ego to soul. If there was a way I could find to do that en masse, I would do it. I don't know what it is, but I think that it's not just one person. I think it's the collective. If each of us could just do that for 10 people, that is what would change humanity. And then everyone would have enough. We would all have enough projects. There would be no homeless people. We would see every person as our brother and our sister and not the enemy.
Mm. I think you're partly on that journey already.
Yeah, I know my purpose now. I will say I've gotten very clear that that is what my purpose is. And the interior design business just gets to benefit from all that great energy because I'm watching it. I'm watching it bloom.
Every client gets to benefit from that great energy and sit within the power of what's been brought to them, whether they know it or don't know it, whether it's, you know, conscious or subconscious or unconscious for them. That energy embodies what you do, and that love is part of that journey. Wow. How deep could we go? All right, how amazing, hon. I so appreciate your time. We're going to have more conversations, that I guarantee. Thank you for giving me all your precious time.
Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, Adrian. It's so beautiful that you have this platform and people get to share their stories and learn from each other and be expanders for each other.
Yeah.
It's really precious. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
No,
Long live
I
the
hope to meet
Gotti
you in
voice.
person one day.
We will definitely.
Yeah.
Probably within 12 months.
Ooh, let's put that in the
Yeah,
let's put that in the
let's
field.
make a plan. Let's make a plan.
You better call me if you come to the Bay Area.
I will. I will.
Take you on an adventure. Okay.
Thank you.
Bless you, my friend.
Bless
Take
you.
care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi guys, I'm Adrian. I'm your host of Talk Design Podcast. I started this podcast a couple of years ago, and in doing it, my aim was to talk to amazing design people, creative minds, people who I could learn from and hopefully you could learn from. This was a big part of my whole reasoning for starting the podcast. We've cracked over 80 episodes and we've done 2 homes tour specials for the AIA Austin in Texas, which have been really great fun, talking just specifically about houses. We've talked to HGTV stars. We've talked to building designers, interior designers, architects, business coaches, and some inspired characters along the way. People who have captured my imagination and their creative output and gone, these people would bring a story to somebody else and maybe inspire them to go a little further with what they're doing as well. So I wanted to reach out and ask you all for some advice, because you are the guys who tune in and listen and subscribe, and I really appreciate that. So I want some advice from you. If you guys would be happy to share with me, what you like best, so that I can better direct what we cover as content. And then also, if there's things you want to solve, what are the 3 biggest things you would like information on? What are those kind of keys, so that I can look and go, okay, let's find somebody who speaks specifically on these points and get some depth of information back to you that would be really useful in your business or in your life or in your home, whichever one it would be. So if I could ask you to do that, I would be forever grateful if you would share with me, just through the email based on the Talk Design website, which is www.talkdesign.show. If you could just reach out via that email and say to me, hey, this would be a really great subject for me, for my business, or for my family, or for my home, or for the way I want to see life. I would love to be able to support you guys and find those people that we could talk to that would bring that to you. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I so appreciate the fact that you listen to the podcast. It makes it all the more fun when I get messages from you to say, hey, this inspired me. I had somebody who sent me one the other day that said, your podcast, and we were talking on a certain subject, it was a game changer for me. It was a game changer in how I viewed how I was looking at what I was doing with my design and what was going to come from that. So these things make it all the more worthwhile. So please, if you could tell me top 3 things that would be useful to you, I would love to support you guys in delivering that. Thank you, and thank you for being a listener. Take care. Have a wonderful day, evening, wherever you are, whatever it is. Cheers, Adrian. Over and out.